Hello, Gary Roberts here, and today we're going to look at MITRE attack technique T1112. It's a defense evasion tactic. It's really general. It's called modify the registry, and essentially it says adversaries might modify the registry to do one of many things to accomplish their task. So it's really pretty generic because the registry controls so much of what Windows does. It's kind of the database of settings. So we can change so many things and really accomplish many tactics, but MITRE has bundled them up under this technique T1112, modify registry. So to make this technique actionable, we're going to go over to the Atomic Red Team project. Here in the Atomic Red Team folder, Red Canaries project Atomic Red Team. In the Atomics folder, technique 1112, we look at the markdown file. And we see we have the same description from MITRE attack at the top here. But we also have a list of atomic tests, which are the scripted cyber attacks to execute on this technique. There's atomic test number 1 all the way down through test number 43. That's really a lot of atomic tests for modifying the registry. We can see one of the scripted cyber attacks puts JavaScript in the registry. Another one disables the Windows registry tool. Let's look at that one. Here it's setting a registry key called disable registry tools and just setting it to a value of 1, which turns that on, disabling the Windows registry tool. So this is an example of a really specific registry key intended to turn off the registry tools. But today we're going to look at a different technique for blocking the execution of the registry tools. And first I'll demonstrate how to use the setting that we're going to play with using the group policy editor. But everything you change in the group policy editor really just changes various registry keys, but we'll look at it first through the group policy editor. So here under user configuration, this is only a user configuration. It doesn't apply to the computer or to all users at once. We're going to look under administrative templates, system. In here there's a system setting that says don't run specified Windows applications. It's normally not configured, but we could configure it here by clicking edit policy setting. But if we read about it here, it's a little hard to read in here. But it describes that you can enable this setting to block certain applications, and then you give it a list of executable names that you don't want allowed to run. The name here is a little misleading because it says Windows applications, which the first time I read it I thought meant Microsoft applications, but really it's just any application that runs on Windows, so any executable. We can block that from being run. But it does have a caveat here that it only blocks things that are launched by Explorer. Don't get that confused with Internet Explorer, the old browser that came before Edge. But Explorer is a process that handles the Windows graphical interface, the GUI. So if we click on a shortcut, we're interacting with Explorer, which then launches that program for us. So the parent process to anything you're clicking on the screen or from File Explorer itself here in File Explorer ends up being launched by the Explorer.exe process. This setting will block executables that match the name we put in the list that are launched with the parent process of Explorer, and we'll show how that's important and how you can bypass this setting easily by changing one of those conditions. Like I said, we could edit the policy right here in the graphical user interface. We could enable it here. We could click show to show the list of applications, and we could add some applications here, like command.exe, for example. But we're going to do it using a scripted cyber attack, an atomic test, because that's a method that we can use non-interactively as part of a continuously automated detection validation process, for example. So I'm going to switch this back to not configured and bring up PowerShell to look at the scripted cyber attack, which was technique 1112, and it was test number 43. And we can show the details of that test. So the attack commands here are to add a registry key called DisallowRun and set it to a value of 1, which is enabling the feature we just looked at in the group policy editor. And then the way that you configure the list of executables to not allow to run is to create another registry key, DisallowRun, with a value of art1, and then the name, well, sorry, the value can be anything. When you do it through the GUI, the group policy editor, it'll just start at 1 and it'll put the first thing you put on the list as a value of 1 and then 2 and then 3. But for this test, I called it art1 just to make it clear that it doesn't have to be any certain number. It can be a mixture of letters and numbers. So we have a key value called art1 and we set it to reg.exe, so regedit.exe. So we're going to block the registry editor. And then we're also going to block command.exe. So let's go ahead and run this. We'll take off the show details and that will execute our test. I am here in an administrative PowerShell prompt because this changing these registry keys does require administrative privileges. Okay, so now the registry editor and command prompt should be blocked. Windows acts a little funny when we try to launch it here. So here we're going to try to run the registry editor. And we're clicking on it and just nothing's happening, which is a little odd. It's really being blocked and it should be giving us a kind of informative error message and it's not. If we search for the registry editor here and we open the file location and click on it here, it actually will give us the error message that it's not going to start it for us. So here it says the operation has been canceled due to restrictions in effect on this computer. So that's the disallow run we just set up that you can set through group policy or directly from the registry like we just did. So we can't start it. But remember that the caveat was that it would only block executables that were launched by the explorer.exe process, which is this graphical interface we're looking at of Windows and this File Explorer. Or in other words, anytime we click something from File Explorer or click on a shortcut on the desktop or here, for example, it would meet that criteria for being blocked. But if we try to start the registry editor from something like the command line, PowerShell here, it actually just runs it just fine. So it didn't block it. And that's because the parent process is now PowerShell instead of explorer.exe. To confirm this, we can use a tool called Process Explorer, a free tool from Microsoft Sysinternal Suite. A lot of great tools in here. I've already downloaded that and started it up here. So if we look at regedit.exe, we see that its parent process here is PowerShell.exe. The parent of PowerShell.exe is actually Explorer.exe, but we can only block things that are direct children of Explorer.exe, and since regedit in this case, when we typed it into PowerShell, got a parent of PowerShell.exe, we're able to run it. So it's not a super strong security configuration at all, but it is something that has been seen used by malware to try and thwart efforts to maybe discover their activities or block them, which may give you the idea, well, maybe malware would want to disable certain security products, like maybe Windows Defender, because if they could keep that from running, that would definitely aid them in their attempts to compromise the system. But the executable for Windows Defender is right here, msmpeng.exe, and we can see the parent process for this is this vm3d service.exe. It's not explorer.exe, so even if we added msmpeng to the list, it wouldn't be blocked by the disallow running. And just as one more demonstration, I want to go into the folder where the registry editor actually is, which is, looks like it's the winder regedit.exe. So let's go into the winder. And let's see, regedit.exe. If we try to run this here, we get the same error message because it's Explorer trying to launch it. But the other condition that had to be met was that the executable had to be in our list. So it had to be regedit.exe, which this is. If we make a copy of regedit, so here we have regedit copy. We'll be able to run that just fine because it's not called the regedit.exe. So here we're running regedit again, and it wasn't blocked by our setting. If we want to look at these registry settings we just did under, actually we need to go to current user, and we see the DisallowRun set to 1, and then we also see the folder down here, DisallowRun, and we see art1 and art2 set to regedit and exe, the two things we're blocking, and we've got blocking enabled. But we saw that it can be worked around really easy if we try to use this as a security configuration by renaming the executable or starting it with a parent process, something other than explorer.exe. But in any case, malware has been seen using this key, and it's a good thing to keep an eye on. It's not something super popular for administrators to be using, so it's a key that we can keep an eye on to catch malware doing this funny business. And that's it for our defense evasion atomic spotlight, modifying the registry to disallow running of specific executables. If you'd like to learn more about the atomic library of scripted cyber attacks, check out my attack emulation tools from Antisyphon Training.